Relationship Headquarters. And today I have a very special guest, Hilary Silver from Ready for Love. And I'm excited to have you here first.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Can tell us a little bit about what you do first before we're going to jump right into our topic, because I was really interested in this.
Yeah, so my background is as a therapist. I had a private practice in Denver for about 14 or 15 years or so. And then I closed that in 2017 and launched Ready for Love, which is a program and the company name devoted to helping really high achieving women have success in their love lives the same way that they do in their careers. Essentially, that's what it's all about.
And I like this. We were talking, especially for those women that achieve a lot and work really hard to get there. I'm thinking of all the women years ago when I started doing this that they really liked working. It wasn't like they were like just escaping, and they were good at it. And you have a lot of women like that. And there was some quality you'd mentioned to me, characteristics that we were going to talk about today. So that's your sort of lead in. Tell us what we were thinking about, because you had an interesting observation.
Yeah. So, I mean, over the years, I've just really started to see trends and patterns. And now I call it the plight of the high achiever, which is that high achieving women, like really hyper achieving women, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, making multiple six figures or more, they're driven, they are ambitious, they love working, and they feel like they have mastery in their careers. They are go getters, they're badass in every way, very capable, very competent, and they go to work and trust themselves. But if you look at the women who struggle with love, who've been divorced or have never been married or divorced many times over, or are always the single ones dating, whatever that is in their love life, where they're not settled into a relationship for the long term, and they want that, but they've not been successful at it, it's usually because all the striving and the seeking and the ambition is coming from a deep inner place to prove self-worth, to prove significance, to prove they're deserving. It's an old childhood wound, like a hole in the soul that they're just so driven to fill. And it works in the work environment. It works in your career because look at, I call it, they build their wall of fame. It's like their mantle of trophies, right? All the accolades, all the credentials, all the dollars in their bank account, whatever. But it rears its ugly head in their love lives the most, this low self-worth, because you can't hide in your romantic relationships. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be authentic. You have to let your walls down. And so that's really what we focus on in Ready for Love, is helping them close that gap and to really fill themselves up from the inside so that they can show up in all other areas of their lives, not just their careers, feeling that same sense of worth and value. And they can stop all the proving and the seeking, even in their careers. They can stop and just relax and be themselves. So that's what we were talking about.
So when you're saying this, and for those watching or listening, some of my background's a therapist, and I got to do shop talk with Hillary for a little bit. I'm like, oh, yes, I remember this. And something interesting you'd said there is that they worked really hard, that their wall of fame, I think is what you called it,
Yeah.
like, and that when I talk to women like this, a lot of them say, I just need to, and nothing wrong with lean back, nothing wrong with that. But it's like an all or nothing. It's like, I need to totally lean back, or it's like there's just two gears.
Yeah.
And trying to describe for them, especially as a woman, you have multiple gears. You have multiple ways of doing this, and that's what I think you're talking about with the authentic. But how do you talk to them about something that's worked so well and it has produced results, and in a lot of ways, it's not a bad thing. You one of the things I used to tell folks was, people would, narcissism such a big word now, and I say, look, if you're a developer, you better have some narcissism. I mean, that's not, you can misuse it and you can use it as a weapon and all. But sometimes I talk to women, I'm wondering how you do it. Is okay, you have these qualities as opposed to good or bad. How do you help them bridge that between, but God, this really works, and what do you mean it's
Well,
getting in the
yeah, a
way?
lot of women are afraid that they have to give up their careers or sacrifice their autonomy or their independence. They really pride themselves in being self-sufficient. But you don't. It's not either or, like you said, or one or the other. It's all. It's both. And so it's really about recognizing, well, first of all, creating self-awareness around when they're being a certain way, or when they're activated to behave a certain way, or they're in a certain energy. And this is where we can kind of talk about some of the masculine and feminine energy. It can be very masculine to be that in that driver, doer, action oriented task mode. And that's a lot of reason why the women are very successful in their careers. And so we play into the energies that we've all heard before. But it's not one or the other. And so it's learning, first of all, to feel your own feelings, to recognize what's going on with you, and then to have mastery over that, to be really effective, is to be able to move in and out of those energies at will when you want to. And even at work, to lean more into a feminine energy, because when you do, you're not working so hard, and you can lean back as a leader and let your team do more, and you don't have to do it all. And so we have a whole kind of framework around this in my program that helps women really embrace all the parts of who they are, and to not be thinking it has to be either or one or the other, but to have all of it, and to be really skilled at noticing it, and stepping in or moving into those kind of behavior traits or energies when they want it.
And so when you say mastery, the first thing when I'm thinking about the women I've talked with is, good, I'm good at mastery. I'm good at, like, choking off these feelings, or let me say these are bad feelings. I'm like, well, I don't know, there's bad feelings. I mean, if you're hungry, that's a good thing. It's trying to tell you to eat. But it's not
Yeah.
comfortable. It's not necessarily a fun thing. But I haven't thought about using that word from a mastery standpoint of flowing in and out, and accessing all of those parts of them. And you even tell
Yeah.
them do this even at work. This isn't just like something you cut on and off around a man. This is just part of who they are.
Yeah. I mean, most women think, when we talk to them, and initially, a lot of them think, well, I'm good at work. I've got everything but the love. But the more we peel back the layers, they can see I am successful at work. However, I've had to climb the ladder with a boulder on my back. I'm still proving, or I still have imposter syndrome. And yeah, it looks good on the outside, but it's taken a lot more for me to get here. That's not always the case, but we do explore those facets of their lives, even like parenting or friendships. Sometimes it's also showing up in their friendships. If they're the pleaser, giver, caregiver type problem solver with men, they sometimes are like that with their adult children, or they're sometimes like that with their friends, or sometimes they're like that at work. So it is exhausting. Now, it's not always like that. But mastery really is being able to, at will, choose, because you have the awareness when you're going to step in and when you're going to step out. And over time, it becomes more natural and effortless and organic. It's not something that you're overthinking so much. It just becomes a part of your new way of being.
Sounds almost like flowing.
Yeah, it is a flow. It's a
Um,
conscious decision to, to lean back, or to lean forward, or to allow or receive, than to push and be kind of the driver. I love telling the story. When my husband and I first met, we met playing ultimate frisbee years ago, and we were on a co-ed team, and we played against a co-ed team called Holes and Poles, because that kind of culture, the frisbee culture can be kind of crass, but it's a great metaphor. The male energy is the pole, and the female energy is the hole. And a lot of my ladies always say, be a hole, ladies, be a hole, because they forget to lean back and receive. But there's a time for both. And it's actually within both men and women to be this way. And so when we can, all of us, men included, learn to receive, and that allows us to be vulnerable, that allows us to tap into our feelings, which you were saying a second ago, learning to feel your feelings, learning to honor them, to express them, to process them, is part of that, so that you can let your emotions be your cue for how you want
and
to react in a certain situation.
so then I'm asking you, as a professional woman, with the women you talk with, how many of them realize how much? I mean, it's not just a successful man. I mean, but men in general really want a best friend. I mean, that word has gotten such a bad label until you talk with men, at least the men I know or have hung around with my whole life and read about now, and it's not what you see a lot of times on the internet. I want this, I want that. I'm like, that's not. it's having a confidant. And I don't know what verbiage you might use, but do they imagine that's true? Does that just seem like, oh, I have to like put my brain in a jar when I'm around someone like this? Or how do they tend to see as far as what's possible?
You mean in terms of what they want in a partner?
Yes, because I've had some that would say, I want this type man. But to do that, I've got to either be feminine all the time, or I've got to be small all the time. I've got to be,
Oh,
and not even realizing that no, that strength, he actually likes that. He doesn't want to compete with him, but it's nice having someone
right.
you can share an idea with that understands what you're talking about business wise or anything else.
Yeah, I mean, my clients want a confidant, but they say they want a companion. They want somebody who they can come home from whatever they've done in their life that day, whether it's hanging out with their friends or kicking ass at work, and go home and be able to talk about that with a partner who gets it. And they don't want to play small. They don't want to dumb themselves down to make somebody else feel better. And the problem is a lot of times they attract men who are intimidated by their success. What I love doing with this whole intimidated by me kind of conversation is women will say out there on social media, if he's intimidated by me, then he's weak. And I
Mhm.
don't believe that, because I think that women can be intimidating when they're leading with their masculine energy. They're leading with their wall up. They're leading with their accomplishments. They're leading with this, look how great I am. And because that's how they feel, where they get their worth. And so it's learning to drop the wall and be vulnerable. And you don't have, that way you don't have to dumb yourself down or be small in any way. You go home and you shift into your feminine energy, still being badass and powerful, but in a feminine way. And the other thing that I love hearing women talk about is, well, I gave him something to do in the house, or I asked him for help. And I'm like, that's not being in your feminine energy. Men are not your task rabbit. It's not about feigning needing help and giving him something to do to help you that makes you in your feminine energy. That's not what it is. It's funny when women say that. So it really is about staying true to you in every way. Do not change who you are at all, because that's when things start to fall apart. And women are doing that without realizing they are. That's why when I say, you have this powerful career and you think that you are confident and have your shit together, but look at your track record with men. It does not reflect that of a woman at your level, nor does it reflect that of a woman who actually really knows her worth and her value, because you've been settling for men who are not your equal. You've been picking men who need you or are not in a good way or don't have their, shit together like you, and settling for less than they desire in a partner or in a relationship. So that's what we have to help change. But it's not about making yourself smaller to get a partner. It's staying true to you to get your equal.
Which almost sounds like a paradox, and that, oh, wow, that you're telling me to do this stuff, at least that I've been doing, or I told that I shouldn't be doing, but yet somehow that's going to actually attract it if I'm more authentic with who I am.
Yeah. But it's scary. It's scary when you don't value yourself or think that you're enough. There's a lot to be afraid of in letting somebody see who you are.
And I'm assuming the risk of being rejected or the risk of being, I think you said the imposter syndrome.
Or abandoned. Like, I think rejection and abandonment are two of the most common fears. And then the other one would be engulfment, like I'm going to lose myself or whatever. But all of those are things that we have
Oh,
the power to
interesting.
change within
Engulfment.
ourselves.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
Do you find that many of them talk about being that engulfment thing? The fear of abandonment, I've heard quite a bit, but the engulfment thing, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's really strong and powerful and they love their careers and they're very self-sufficient. Most of my clients are 40 and up. And so they've been through it all. A lot of them have kids and they've learned to be very self-sufficient and to take care of everything, and they're exhausted and they don't want to do that anymore. But that's the only way that they know how to be. So even in relationships, this is what's familiar for them. They create this dance over and over and over again. So that's why I say it's like losing yourself in a relationship has nothing to do with him. That has everything to do with you. And do you trust yourself not to let go? You got to hang on to yourself, even when you're all excited about somebody and the potential of this relationship just seems incredible that you stay true to you from the very beginning. You never let go of yourself. And that's so fear of engulfment, like we have the control of making sure that never happens again. That's not up to him.
So that's staying centered with who you are, that authentic part, and not getting lost in someone else. So when you're talking
Yeah.
with them and they're going through this process, are there, I know we said fear of abandonment, engulfment, but are there any common roadblocks in the sense of this should happen faster? I should feel something really intense, but I don't, or I'm scared of getting bored, or I'm making stuff up that you hear common with them?
In terms of when they're in a new relationship or when they're going through
Well,
the
I'm thinking about
process
like
with
the
me.
transition. So there's this what's familiar you're talking about, and I understand this with men too. Is that especially if you're a small business owner, everybody says delegate, delegate. Well, that's great to delegate, but then when you do, it doesn't go well. Oh, I'm going to do that again. So I can only imagine times two as a woman with doing that in relationships. Also, I think there's probably a reason they don't. So we're saying, oh yeah, let's do this differently over
To
here, and
delegate.
I'm just assuming some fears or
I guess
something's
I'm
going to
not
feel
actually,
like
I'm
this
not
is
sure exactly. I
unfamiliar.
want to answer your question, but I want to make sure I understand exactly what you're asking.
So we have, I've got
Yeah.
women that they're excited about doing something new, makes sense logically, and then they start to do it, and all of a sudden, he's boring. I mean, okay, we've been on one date. I don't necessarily know. That's a common one I hear, but I'm bored, and they're terrified of being bored. And bored means something's awful going to happen. Some may do something else. Because I was wondering from you if there's something. Because if I'm a successful woman, I'm not, but if I am, I've tried a lot of different things and it doesn't work. And there's usually a warning signal or something that comes up, lets me know, oh, this is a waste of time and I don't want to waste time, or I don't want to make another mistake, or I don't want to, any things that they come up with that they, I guess, falsely identify as a warning sign when it really isn't one.
I mean, changing patterns for everyone is hard. It
Yeah.
is. And so when they're out there trying it a new way, like and learning something and getting it intellectually and then putting it into practice are two totally different things. Part of the coaching is around how to go through the process of making the change. And so it's stay with it, trust the process. If you do one thing differently this time than you're used to doing, that's already breaking a pattern. So, some women are like, I'm skydiving, I'm jumping off, I'm doing it. And other women are like baby steps, little thing,
Mhm.
little bits at a time. And you can go as fast or as slow as you want at implementing the change, but it'll feel new and different. But one of the things that we say in my program, and I've learned this from my clients, is they'll say, "Oh my God, Hilary, this thing happened to me today. And the old me would have done this or reacted this way, but the
Hmm.
new me responded like this." And it's a huge celebration because they're actually implementing or integrating the change. And it can be small things or major things, but sometimes it's like, well, somebody said something to me or a guy said something to me and the old me would have. I know, I'll give you a perfect example. One lady was telling me that a guy started texting with her really like in a very sexy way, but too soon. And she said, Hillary, the old me would have gotten all blushy and like excited that he was talking to me like that. And the new me is wiser and was like, ew, no, goodbye.
Hmm.
And so the old me and the new me, like those are examples
That's a great
of
example.
implementing change, right?
And for her to be able to see that, be like an observer, to see that. Okay, yeah, that is what I was asking, because I've always wondered what that is. That I know folks have asked about how do we, I need to totally understand on the front end and feel good about it along the way. I'm like, well, I don't know that you're necessarily going to feel good because that just means you're doing the same stuff. If
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
going
yeah.
for more.
Feel It feels good in the moment when it's the same stuff, and then at the end you're like, I did it again. You kick
Mhm.
yourself, and that's why knowing better doesn't always mean doing better. So what we do, and I don't know if you this is how you do things too, Bob,
That's a good.
when in
Actually,
your program, but we have an educational
knowing better doesn't always mean doing better. That's a great line. I'm just emphasizing for those
yeah.
watching.
Yeah.
Sorry, please keep
Knowing
going. I
better
just
doesn't always
lost.
mean doing better, which is
No, I just wanted to do that thing, but please keep going because that was a really good line for someone watching
yeah.
to hear and see.
Yeah, so knowing better but not doing better are like the women who've done counseling for years. They know exactly why they do what they do, where it comes from. My mommy, my daddy, my childhood, they know it. they're using all the language around narcissism or attachment or, trauma, whatever, whatnot, but it doesn't translate into doing something differently. So knowing better, but not doing better, is really frustrating. It's like trying to lose 20 pounds and you're not supposed to eat cake, but you eat the cake anyway. And you're like, damn it, I did it again. That's really hard. It's not quite the same thing as when women say, Hilary, I know it must be me. I'm doing something, but I have no idea what it is. Please just tell me what it is. Those are two very different women.
And it sounds like your
So, yeah.
program that you'll do a very good job of actually, it's not just knowing, but experiencing it and actually having, while you're there with them, coaching that we're going to
Well,
bring
that's
on
what I
this.
was going to ask you is, I'm assuming that some of the work you do is a combination of providing education and skills training and information and teaching them things that they don't know about themselves or about relationships, and then supporting them in applying, new ways of engaging or new ways of thinking to their life specifically so that they're actually there's a transformation happening. That's the difference between knowing better and doing better, is actually the transformation actually occurring. So I'm assuming that that's kind of what you do as well.
Yes, what's nice is I think probably most of it may be put a little different spin, but just listening to you, because I've always liked the experiential. I mean, it's education, get them an idea, but then how does it feel for them? How does it sound for them? How does that, just listening to you, that sounds like what you do with your team is actually while they're in the midst of it. I love that's the example of the person of just the old me would have done this. And so I hear someone internalize it like that. I mean, that's when it's fun. I'm like, yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah, when women report that, it's like big celebrations. We just, we erupt on our calls. We're like, "Yay! Can we get a hallelujah for Jennifer, or let's get an amen for Amy?" Like, it's so fun because it's worthy of celebrating, especially lifetime patterns of behavior or reactions that change. It's huge.
So before we close up, for those that don't know you that well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is I'm a big believer in patterns. I mean, that patterns tell a lot of stuff. And you've been doing this for a while. This is not, we all started something new, think it would work, but you've done this for years. And how long have you been doing this with women? I mean, just this specific, your current program, your current,
Um,
what your business does now.
Yeah, Ready for Love launched in 2017, the end of 2017. So it's been a long time that we've been running this program. And then, of course, before that, with my therapy practice, is where some of the content, started to develop. And I started doing this in a different format, but, one-on-one, one at a time in my office with clients. And even some of the work that I did with couples was informing the content that I provide and that I teach, relationship, education or information. So it's been, Ready for Love has been 7 years. It's tested and proven it works. But leading into that was 15 years of, testing it. You had a private practice, like it's like doing research that's just not documented,
No, and for those watching, there's a lot to be said for having a private practice, because when you have a private practice, if the stuff you say doesn't work, people don't come back. And so those folks that have counsel like Hilary has and still does and coached and is very result oriented, that's the reason I trust it a lot and it makes sense. So we're going to put a link and some information about you below this, whether it's on YouTube or the podcast. But just tell them, is there any place where you want them to go or that they can see you specifically?
I think the best place to get started is just to go to readyforloveinc.com. And on the homepage right there, you can click to sign up to watch my free masterclass. And that's going to really share, more of my philosophy, more about what I do, get a feel for me if you haven't already from this conversation. And then if you want to take it to the next level, you can. There's an option to book a call with us, but start with the webinar because, we're not for everybody. I cuss and I'm kind of, really direct, and some people aren't ready for that. So, it's the best place to start is to dip your toe in, check out the master class or the webinar. And then if you're interested in talking to us, you can book a call. We offer a free, hour-long breakthrough conversation with my team.
That's very generous. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Hope everyone's enjoyed as much as I have with Hilary. And we'll look forward to having you back. And be sure and check her out, the information below. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks,
Right.
everyone.